One last go for the semester. Caden and Jake on last call. We'll start with UINDY Sports. Basketball takes a trip to St. Louis, and one that they wish they could redo. We'll start with the women's squad. They go 0-2 on the trip, losing to the University of Missouri St. Louis and most recently Maryville on Saturday, just a couple of days ago. So we go back and look at those scores for the women's squad. 64-49 loss at UMSL, and then a 76-73 loss at Maryville. And it's kind of tough to break these two games down. We saw different things, some different stats. What are you looking at?
Well, I mean, offensively, when you look over at that Maryville game, we'll jump ahead a little bit. You see Alana Wells, 4 3-pointers, 22 points. I mean, that's what I love to see personally, because last year I got the chance of watching her play, and she can ball. I think she had, two 30-point games last year. We know she can put the ball in the basket, but this year she started off with an injury, didn't get a full preseason, and we really saw the effects in the early couple of games. She wasn't getting to start. Now working her way back into that starting lineup, finding her rhythm, finally getting that 20-point game. I'd love to see that for her, but obviously fall a little bit short against a Maryville squad that you beat a couple times in the past couple of years. So time to go back to the drawing board. Patricia Chikamba, 15-15.
Yep.
You see a lot of good on this team. It's just one extra step, and I'm not exactly sure what that missing piece is right now. I'll have to watch them a little bit more, but as we go on, it seems like the defense is showing it to be the strong suit of this team.
You know, to see Alana scoring over 20, 4 hounds in double figures, and Chikamba with 15-15, you ask yourself, you see all these numbers, why isn't it translating to wins? And I feel like that's a tough question to ask, and that's something that you have to talk about in the locker room as coaches with your team. We're putting these numbers up, and it's just not translating into wins. It's about flipping the floor the right way. You understand? Making that transition from offense to defense, making the transition from defense to offense. And basketball, the game it is, you're going to see a lot of downs, you're going to see a lot of ups. It's just finding the ups, right? And capitalizing on those, finding your brand as a team where you can succeed. And I think you've done that this trip. You've seen an outbreak from Wells. You've seen Chikamba play at her best. And it's how do you work these play styles? How do you work this team into the best place to succeed? And you're in a tough spot in a tough conference where you're going to play tough games weekend in, weekend out. So it's not like you have an off game where you can fix everything. Practice has to be key. You have to capitalize on what you have and make do from there.
Well, I mean, you look at this team and you look at 31 points off of turnovers. Not for them. They gave up 31 points off of turnovers. This is a team that turns the ball over a lot, and other teams pick up on that. Now that you're in GLVC play, you're looking at conference teams. You get to play them twice a year. They're pretty familiar with your play style, obviously. New team, but not very good handling the ball. Every single team, I believe, this season has pressed the Greyhounds, at least at some point during the game. Sped them up, caused a lot of turnovers. At the last time I looked, I think they were averaging 22 turnovers a game.
Man, I don't know about you, Jake, but I've played on some teams where turnovers have been issues, and coaches have just set us up on opposite sides of the lane or whatever. We're just practicing the chest pass, the bounce pass, the chest pass over and over again. We'll do defensive slides all the way down the floor, passing that ball back and forth. You know the exact drill I'm talking about. And it's not to undermine this team, but you're doing the big things right. It's just about doing the little things right. Passing the ball, making the bounce pass when it's appropriate, making the overhead lob when it's appropriate, and just getting a better gauge of where your teammate is and just kind of corralling the chemistry together.
Yeah, I think you mentioning that chemistry is a perfect thing to go into now, because that's what this team is missing, in my opinion. You see them sometimes, they'll drive into the lane and run into each other. Just something that you don't see a coordinated team do. And we got the chance to watch Lewis. They're the number 1 team in the GLVC right now, and they look like it. They beat UMSL pretty handily. I think it was a 10-point game there. So they're kind of emerging as that number 1 team. But I saw some good things watching the Greyhounds against Lewis. Once they started to press, though, that was when they kind of started to struggle.
And that's kind of the note on the Greyhounds as they head further into their season. But for the men's squad, they're not seeing much better days. In all honesty, they played the same teams as well. The University of Missouri St. Louis called them UMSL, and then Maryville this past week. And the scores for that one, 66-59 against UMSL, and then 69-59 against Maryville. So we'll look at the Maryville game where the Greyhounds, frankly, just aren't shooting the rock very well. 3 for 20, 15% from deep, and I mean, you were kind of looking at some numbers before the game. You shoot 20 and you only make 3. Is that a shot selection thing?
It is and it isn't. Another stat that I just happened to see now that I think is kind of more shocking and probably more of a reason why they lost. How about 14 for 31 from the free throw line? That is atrocious. That's your win right there. You lost by 10 points. You hit 10 free throws. You get yourself a win there. So that's kind of, I mean, you look at the stats, they can score. Deshaun Jackson, phenomenal scorer. His pull-up 3, while it wasn't there this weekend, I've seen him make it. He can definitely do that. Brody Whitaker, he's a very crafty player. Him, Grant Diskin, they're very crafty around the rim, very good at getting their shot up against bigger guys. It's just, I think where they lack right now is in the paint. I mean, they're giving up 36 points per game around there in the paint, at least this weekend. And you look at the rebounding battles in that UMSL game, they gave up 42 rebounds, only got 27. So it's just the small things. Points in the paint, I think once the bigs start to play on the same level as the guards, I think that's when you see this team come around and start winning these close conference games.
And when we look at the games that they've won, some big games like the opening night against Kentucky Wesleyan, you go to overtime and you see a team that's playing with all kinds of energy, and they still play with energy. This team is high intensity, a lot. Grant Diskin always in the huddle, getting the guys together. Deshaun Jackson doing the same thing. But what I'm looking at is just, it's not very fluid. You know, it doesn't look like it's fun on the floor. I mean, you have some great plays and you have great stretches, but this team had 4 assists against UMSL. 4 assists. 10 against Maryville, which matched Maryville's number in that category, but still, I think that's an area to improve on. This is an offense that's trying to figure out where the shots are still going to come up from, and I think it's probably too late in the season to still be having those tests. And as you work through the conference for the first time in Coach Hetty's career, as we said for the women's team, this is not going to be an easy schedule. I mean, you look who you have coming up for the Greyhounds, and it's actually a couple non-conference games. Thomas More and then Grand Valley. Grand Valley is always up there in the Midwest Regional. Mm-hmm. So these are definitely not, rollovers of teams that you're coming up. So you're getting to the point of the season where you have to figure these things out. Where are the shots coming from? Who is going to be the guy down the stretch, which is something the Greyhounds have been struggling to find. Whitaker, Jackson, Noah Khan, Diskin. I mean, there's a lot of hands that want the ball and could possibly pose that option at the end of the ball game, but that's a question to figure out.
Yeah, and then another big thing to think about, freshman Tugger Tornada coming in. He's becoming the starting center for this team, so you think about that youth. And also, same thing goes as the women's team. You look at this, no one's played together, really. Zach Schul, Dylan Ingram, really the only 2 that got any minutes last year. They played a little bit together, but you look at the rest of this team, pretty much completely new, and I think they're seeing some of the same effects that the women's team is seeing with that chemistry, just not necessarily knowing where everyone is. I feel like that's something that you get playing with someone. You get a feel for where they're at on the court, what shots they like to take, where they like to take them, and right now it just seems like every once in a while they have a little stretch where they get a little discombobulated, about 5 minutes where they don't have any buckets, they're giving up points in the paint, and I think you look at this team, and I'm not worried about them. I'm really not too worried about them. I think that after this little break, winter break, I think they figure things out, and I think that it's up from here.
You know, we oftentimes forget that this is a stressful week, not just for us as students, but for the student athletes, right? They're practicing 5-6 days a week, and then they have finals on 3 of the 5 days in the week. So it's a tough lookout, and hopefully the Greyhounds can get back to it after this winter break, getting back to action against Thomas More on Wednesday, at least for that men's squad. When we come back, look, college football almost at its apex. Saw some great games this past weekend. We'll break them all down and talk about who we have going forward in the college football playoff.
Good morning, Greyhounds, and welcome back to your Wednesday show. We have some very exciting things to talk about with our very special guest.
So what do you find unique about UINDY, and what kind of pulled you here?
What are you doing?
Watching Good Morning Greyhounds every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m.
A long college football season, all leading to the week in front of us. Playoff picture is set. A lot of great teams, and the first time we're going to see this 12-team playoff format. So look, IU, Tennessee, Ohio State, Boise State, all these teams, SMU, that you would never get to see in the original 4-team playoff spot, it's here. It's here. So some mixed feelings from me about it personally. I feel like there's going to be a lot of good, a lot of bad, a lot of fun, possibly a couple boring games. I'm looking at Texas and Clemson, but a lot to go over here, Jake. A lot to break down.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a very exciting season. I think I saw somewhere where there was 70-something unranked teams that beat a ranked team at some point during this season, which, if that's not exciting, I mean, I love a nice upset. But like you said, some of these matchups, not necessarily the best, but this is what people have been asking for I don't know, since the 4-team playoff became a thing.
Yeah.
2 teams wasn't enough. They had to make it 4. 4 teams wasn't enough. I mean, at this point, we might as well just put everyone in, make it a 64-team bracket. But obviously, Alabama fans, they're upset they didn't get in. And SMU fans probably pretty lucky to sneak their way into that one. I don't know that – I don't know. The committee, I think, was pressured by the public to not pick that SEC team in Alabama.
Well, I feel like the whole point of this 12-team format was so we don't see Alabama play Ohio State each and every year. So this kind of reinforces that idea, them being just about the first team out. But as we hop in to what our brackets look like and how we think this is going to go, the four teams get first-round byes. Those Oregon, Arizona State, Georgia, and Boise State, which if that was the 4-team playoff, that would really be something. But let's look at this, okay? So we start in the first round, and I think 3 out of 4 of these are pretty self-explanatory. 3 out of 4 are going to be pretty self-explanatory, right? So Ohio State is going to knock Tennessee off the map. Ohio State is going to blow the SEC out of the water. Down here, Texas, making no problem with Clemson to set up the left side of the bracket here on your screen. On the right side, however, we'll start this bottom right corner because Penn State I think they'll have a solid game. I don't think it'll be a blowout against SMU, but they'll go ahead and face Boise State. And here, I think will be the closest matchup of this opening round, IU versus Notre Dame, right? And I know I kind of got on a backtrack about this Hoosiers team and what they could do, but at the same time, you're traveling up to South Bend, coming off of really humiliation, I feel like, is what it was like in the IU locker room after the loss to Ohio State, which, I mean, barring some special teams errors, wasn't a massacre, in all honesty. So,
you did not.
I did.
He did
I hate
not.
to say it.
No.
I hate to say it. IU is going to go play Georgia, and that is going to be your playoff picture after the opening round of action. But we'll start right there with IU Georgia again. Did I do it again? No. I'm sorry.
No.
Couldn't do it again. So Georgia's going to go to the Final Four. They would be in the 4-team playoff format if it were to still be that way. Boise State, while I like them, while they have a Heisman candidate on their team, they're playing a very solid Big Ten squad. And Penn State, who really gave Oregon a game in that Big Ten championship at Lucas Oil not too long ago. Texas, I feel like their schedule underrepresents them in what they did this year. Arizona State, I think they win by 2 scores. Should be fun to watch, but Texas wins somewhat easily. And I think Ohio State, Oregon might be the best game that we see the entire playoffs.
I'd have to agree with that one. I mean, that's a rematch of – see, when I look at this game, I look at it like Ohio State won. They're a small mistake, which really wasn't a mistake. If you go back and look, there's 1 second on the clock, but we'll leave that out. It's a loss on the record. I think Ohio State comes back with some vengeance, but we'll get to mine in a minute.
You know what? I'm with you. I think Ohio State felt left out of that Big Ten championship game, and they make everybody understand why right here. So you got the Final Four, Ohio State and Texas. That's the first matchup, and while I like Ohio State, I love their defense, I think Texas has played their best football, barring some fourth quarter mistakes in primetime this year. And I think Ohio State will be that win to push them over the hump as they get to the championship, and they play Georgia.
She got 2 SEC teams.
They play Georgia. Look, I love Penn State. I love the Big Ten. Born and bred in Big Ten country, right? But Penn State, they're no Georgia. And Georgia's been here before. Georgia's going to do it again when they beat Texas in the final.
I mean, that's a pretty good bracket. It's not too bad. I mean, I look at it, I see a lot of
Not
similar.
too bad. What?
Little similar, but I think that I'm going to show you the true bracket. And the only problem with two SEC schools is that, well, one, Georgia's not beating Notre Dame.
Okay.
And two,
We'll
Texas
see.
is not making the championship.
Right.
But we'll go ahead and hop into mine over here. You'll see the same clean slate.
So
And-
we know you picked Notre Dame.
Okay, everything is the same except for the Notre Dame part pretty much. So I got Notre Dame over IU. I've got Penn State over SMU. I have Texas over Clemson. And I have Ohio State over Tennessee. So you see right there, I mean, pretty simple. I feel like you said all very self-explanatory. Apparently you think Ohio State. Well, you got a little preview of mine. But unfortunately for my Buckeyes, I'm a realist. And
A realist, really?
Oregon is playing some of the best football I have watched in a long time, and a lot of people sleep on this Penn State team because they haven't played a tough schedule. They had a close one against Minnesota. It's a very good Penn State team that pushed Oregon to the limit, and like I said, I know that they're going to be coming back with some vengeance. Ohio State's going to want to get their get back, but Oregon's the #1 team in the country for a reason.
When these two teams played, Ohio State lost by 1 in Oregon.
I understand. And this is going to be in Oregon as well. So for that reason, I'm going to go with Ohio State, and then pretty much the same all around except.
You mean Oregon, right?
Did I say Ohio State? My bad. Oregon,
It's
and then
habit.
I'll take.
I understand.
I'll take Texas. I'll take Penn State over Boise, kind of the same reason. I just think that defense is a little bit too tough for Jeanty. And then I'm going to go Notre Dame over Georgia. I don't think Georgia's offense can handle the Notre Dame defense. I mean, we've seen what they can do. Except
Yeah,
for
the
that
team
game
that wins a
against
national
NIU.
championship every other year can't handle Notre Dame, that's for sure.
Trust. All right, so here is the Final Four. Obviously, there's no way Texas is making it to the championship. Oregon over Texas, and a little bit of a shocker, Notre Dame in the national championship game. I know a lot of my friends that are Notre Dame fans are going to be happy to hear that from me, but
They won't hear it anywhere else, that's for
yeah,
sure.
I'm sure they won't. But unfortunately for them, they are not going to win the national championship this year. It is going to be the Oregon Ducks, your national champions of 2024.
Well, I think Oregon's a good pick. I like Oregon. I love everything that they do. But they almost got beat by one man in Boise State. You have to think back earlier in this season. Ashton Jeanty almost single-handedly beat Oregon.
And,
but we'll talk about him in here.
I mean,
in a
if
second.
almost counted, Alabama would be probably #1, Georgia would be #2, but almost doesn't count. The only thing that matters is the actual record, the actual stats, and the actual winner. So we'll keep a track of this over the break, and we'll get back to you on that. We'll see who did, or well, how both of us did, I guess.
Go Dogs. Go Dogs. I even drew some up for it. It's red.
All right.
It's a red G, kinda. However, so we look at the bracket, but there is a looming question over college football right now between two guys I think the Heisman race has been narrowed down to. And on one end, a running back who has really put the league on notice, put the nation on notice, breaking records on records on records in Jeanty, and two players and one of the best talents we've seen on the gridiron in years, an All-American on both the offensive and defensive side of the football. This is, well, the question of all questions here on Last Call. Who's your Heisman, Jake?
Well, as you can see behind me, I'm going to be pulling for Ashton Jeanty to win the Heisman. And yes, two-way player, Travis Hunter, very phenomenal. He only sits less than 10 snaps a game, and blah 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 blah.
You
He's
can
very
keep
good
reading the
player.
resume.
He's a very good player, and I'm sure you'll go into that in a moment. But you look at Ashton Jeanty, and first off, before we do any player comparisons to former Heismans, I'll just read you off his stat line real quick. He is 3 yards away from 2,500 yards, 29 touchdowns on the season with 344 carries. That means he's averaging 7.3 yards per game, which is 2 more yards than Derrick Henry averaged in his Heisman season in 2015. And only 3 running backs have won the Heisman since the year 2000. We know this is a quarterback award. It's going to be a little bit harder. However, only
Does that count
one.
Reggie Bush?
Yes, it was. Reggie Bush, Mark Ingram, and Derrick Henry, the last three. So the only one that was a receiver was Devontae Smith. That was a couple of years ago, so that's going a little bit in your direction. Broke the barrier for that one. But you look at Ashton Jeanty. He's had his fair share of tests against Oregon. Not his best game, but he gave his team a chance to win that one. I think they lost by 3, 37.
Yeah, they lost by 3, and
yeah.
I mean, really, you can make the argument that wasn't his best performance of the year, but he had 3 touchdowns and over 250 yards against Oregon.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So you look at that, a very good game against the number 1 team in the nation. Then you look at the number 10 rushing defense in all of the land in UNLV. Not exactly where you would expect that to come from, but the stats don't lie. You look at that, he had, 209 yards and a touchdown against them in the conference championship. Gave his team, in my opinion, the win. Maddox didn't have the greatest game. But you look at the rest of this, he has had 5 200-yard games. He's had 13 100-yard games. And just to compare that to Derrick Henry had 4 200-yard games and only 10 100-yard rushing games. And it's a common consensus among everybody pretty much in analytics right now that in any other year, Ashton Jeanty would have run away with this Heisman Trophy. But you're looking at a guy in Travis Hunter, and I'll give it to you. It is very appealing, a two-way player. He plays almost the whole game. But if you were to break this down player by player, a defensive back and a wide receiver, he is an average receiver and a very good defensive back. And in my opinion, I don't know that warrants pretty much the greatest honor in all of college football in the Heisman.
You say an average receiver?
I say an average receiver.
Well, average is good enough for All-American as a receiver, that's for sure. Average was good enough for, Offensive Player of the Week many, many times. Average was good enough to lead the Power 4 in receiving touchdowns. And, average was also good enough to be considered a Heisman candidate for sure. So as we look at what Travis Hunter has done to college football, he's done something that nobody has ever done before, and that is succeed at the level that he's succeeding at on both ends. So the argument for Hunter, as it relates to Jeanty, while Jeanty may be the most fantastic one-man show on the planet, you have 2 players built into Travis Hunter. 2 Heisman candidates built into Travis Hunter. Realistically, this guy is going to go to the NFL, and he has a chance to play like Deion Sanders, play both sides of the ball. And, you could draft either the DB or the wide receiver. So I don't see how there is any pick against the guy who has 2 resumes to look at. And while Ashton Jeanty's doing great stuff at the running back position, we hear stuff about great running backs every year. And I understand that this guy is breaking records that have been held for a long time, that have stood for a long time, and he looks to join elite company in Reggie Bush, Derrick Henry, and Mark Ingram. He's not a DB and a wide receiver at the same time. You're looking at 2 guys. It's 2-on-1. It's unfair to Jeanty.
I think we're looking at a product of the Deion effect. It happened when he came into Colorado. He brought in all the fans, blah, 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 blah. He did the same thing with Travis Hunter. Yes, Travis Hunter is a very good player, and I love watching him play. I tune into Colorado games almost every other weekend. But that doesn't mean that he is deserving of this Heisman Trophy. You look at this, compared to Barry Sanders, quote-unquote, greatest running back in all of college football, 2,628 yards. Ashton Jeanty is I think it's right under 150 yards away from breaking that record. And the only difference, Barry Sanders had a couple more touchdowns. But Ashton Jeanty has been, in my opinion, the best running back in college football in the past 20 years. And the stats really back that up. He outperformed Derrick Henry, and I didn't think anyone would ever be better than Derrick Henry in college or NFL. And Ashton Jeanty has a chance to do that. I think right now they haven't projected to go with the Cowboys, which, we know what they can do with running backs. We've seen them with Zeke and even Barry Sanders. No, that was the Lions. But I was going with Deion.
I'm with you.
Barry Sanders was on my paper. But, you look at this, it's obviously a quarterback award, and I think that it's nice to see a little change up.
It is refreshing, I'll say that.
To not see 3 quarterbacks up on the Heisman Final 4. So I think it's good to have both of them, and I would be happy with either of them winning.
It, like you said, refreshing, and just when it boils down to it, I'm going to love to watch both these guys in the NFL. I'm going to love to watch both these guys in the NFL. I'll just be able to watch Travis Hunter do it twice as much. And that's all the argument to be had on that front. I think it's Travis Hunter. I think that he's worked. He's been in every headline I've seen for the past 2-3 years in college football. You know, this guy is, he's Superman in this sport.
It's kind of a similar argument to an MVP of an NBA team, a Finals MVP, whatever. It's who's most important. That's how I look at the Heisman. Who is most important to their team? Boise State without Ashton Jeanty is not a top 10 team. They're not a top 25 team. I don't even know how good they would be. Maddox is good, but he's not good without Ashton Jeanty. And, you look at the Buffaloes, they're probably still a pretty good team. Obviously, Travis Hunter brings a different level of just defense and offense. Being on the field at all times, I think, allows you to lock in a little bit more. You're always focused on the game, not having to sit out for multiple plays. But I think that the Buffaloes are still a good team without Travis Hunter, and I think that is going to be the final point in my argument.
All right. I'll take you there. We're going to come back and talk some Pacers as they continue to disappoint the city of Indianapolis on the way.
There's often a moment when you're helping somebody with math where they just suddenly get over that little barrier and they get it. It's a nice aha moment, and I really like being involved in helping students achieve that moment, and we do get a lot of those here in the tutoring lab.
Pacers at 10-15 on the year, just lost to the Hornets.
That's about it. They lost to the Hornets. T.J. McConnell had 30 points, and that's all we have to report on the Pacers. With that, we'll be moving on to our NFL Pick Em. And last week, we had a couple of different picks, and luckily for me, the double doink worked out in my favor. Chiefs win, and as you'll see on the records, Jake is ahead by 1.
I made the call of a century that the Chargers are going to be there. Last play of the game, and they get bailed out by a doinked field goal. Chiefs get bailed out by a doinked field goal. It's either the referees or something crazy. You can do everything you want to see the Chiefs fail. It just doesn't happen, I guess. Not this week at least, but hey, still one more week to go. And 3 games on the line right here. Bengals and Cowboys. Cowboys have not been good inside AT&T all year. That means they're due. This is a gambler's mentality. Cowboys are due. Bengals, they're buns. And that's just the way their season has been going. If there's any game to pick up for Dallas, it's going to be this one.
Yeah, no. Not going to happen. This Dallas team sucks. They are very bad. My roommate knows it. We watch them every single week, and they suck. I will be watching every second of this game. I am going with my Bengals on this one.
Hey, that's a way to get back there, right there. We'll see the records that changes after this game, for sure. San Francisco taking on the Rams.
You look at this one, still a very hurt San Francisco team. And I think that's going to be their downfall, at least for the next couple of weeks, maybe even in the beginning of the playoffs if they make it. But I'm going to go Rams. I like Nakua. I like Cooper Kupp. I think they get a win here.
Surprisingly, I'm doing the same exact thing. I was not thinking Jake was going to say the Rams. However, 49ers haven't been playing great football, while the Rams have been an upset machine as of late, which is why we're both on that Rams bandwagon. Final game on the slate, Packers traveling to Seattle. Seattle leads their division right now. The Packers are coming off a loss to who I call over and over again the best team in the NFL, and the Lions. A close loss at that. While they're in a wild card spot right now, Packers still have some football to play, and they're playing the best football they've been playing all year. Packers by a mile, even traveling to Seattle.
Yeah, shout out Packers for losing last week. I think I mentioned the cheese grater. Maybe someone actually brought cheese and a grater this time. I sent it to Caden in the middle of the game just to remind him that I got that pick right. But this week I'm going with the Packers. I like them over the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks have been that mid team that if I put all my chips on them, they're going to lose. They will lose if I pick them. I don't think that it's just my bad luck, and I don't think they're good enough to overcome it.
All right, let's see the records.
Oh. First lead of the year, and I think it's going to stay that way.
It might. It may. We only had what? As we look at the past games, best I could do is tie it right now.
Yep. I mean, I think so. I think we had.
Give me the 49ers.
Okay.
There, that's a win. 49ers beating the Rams, and I'm coming back, holding my belt once again. We'll see. It's not looking good right now, but I've been in worse spots. You remember last year against Graham? He mollywopped me. And then I laid the boom on Jace in this past primetime pick 'em for basketball. So as we move to football here, I got to get something going. That's why we're picking the 49ers. Scratch it. Move the face over, and San Francisco is going to pull one out for the entire team.
All right. Well, I mean, unfortunately, we aren't going to get to look at those records until the start of next semester because we've got a nice little well-deserved break coming up.
A well-deserved break. Are you doing anything special?
I believe I'm going to be going down to Bloom for the playoff game.
That's the
Unfortunately, it's not going to
move.
be.
That is the move.
Yeah.
We will see you in Bloomington. Well, will IU beat Notre Dame? I think so. Jake doesn't. We'll break it down here in about 2 months when nobody cares anymore. Right here on Last Call. Thank you for joining us this semester. This will do it. It's been fun. I'm Caden. This is Jake. Anything else to say?
No. Thanks for tuning in.
We'll be back next semester.